A trove of Facebook documents has been released detailing how the social media site has exposed vulnerable communities around the world to a cocktail of dangerous content, divisive content. Now, these internal documents, dubbed the Facebook Papers, were published widely by a consortium of news outlets who obtained the redacted materials made available by a company whistleblower. Her name is Frances Haugen. Now, let me give you some of these revelations, and then we'll go to some of the testimony from the whistleblower herself. So according to the Washington Post, the company exhaustively studies potential policy changes for their effects on user engagement and other factors key to corporate profits. Amid this push for user attention, Facebook abandoned or delayed initiatives to reduce misinformation and radicalization. In fact, one 2019 report tracking a dummy account set up to represent a conservative mother in North Carolina found that Facebook's recommendation algorithms led her to QAnon, an extremist ideology that the FBI has deemed a domestic terrorism threat, in just 5 days. Still, Facebook allowed QAnon to operate on its site largely unchecked for another 13 months. Now, before we go to more details about these documents and what they say, I do want to go to the first video featuring Frances Haugen because she is not only the Facebook whistleblower, she's given us a lot of insight, honestly reinforcing what many already believed, but also giving us some new information. And she talks here specifically about how the algorithm favors bad actors who post the divisive content. Let's watch.
I am not aware of any research that demonstrates a political bias on Facebook. I am familiar with lots of research that says the way engagement-based ranking was designed, so Facebook calls it meaningful social interactions, though meaningful could have been hate speech or bullying up until November 2020, and it would still be considered meaningful. So let's call it social interaction ranking. I've seen lots of research that says that kind of ranking, engagement-based ranking, prioritizes polarizing, extreme, divisive content. It doesn't matter if you're on the left or on the right, it pushes you to the extremes and it fans hate, right? Anger and hate is the easiest way to grow on Facebook. There's something called virality hacking, where you figure out all the tricks on how to optimize Facebook. And good actors, good publishers are already publishing all the content they can do. But bad actors have an incentive to play the algorithm, and they figure out all the ways to optimize Facebook. And so the current system is biased towards bad actors and biased towards people who push people to the extremes.
So before we go on, I just want to note one thing, right? The whole business model for Facebook and many other social media platforms is to increase engagement, meaning the more time you spend on the platform, the better. Now, people like to think of advertising as the main revenue source for Facebook, but the fact of the matter is they make a ton of money by collecting user data and selling it to third parties. That's a huge part of their profit motive and their profit model. And remember, this is a publicly traded company, which means they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. What they're trying to do is maximize profits for their shareholders. That is priority number one. So when you see the media and the way that they cover this story, I'm not saying reject the narrative or the questions about whether Mark Zuckerberg is a good guy or a bad guy. I think that that's a secondary question. Because the primary thing that people should be focusing on is how this system, not just with Facebook, the system overall incentivizes exactly what Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook is doing right now. Again, fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders. That's number one. Everything else is secondary. They don't have a fiduciary, they don't have a responsibility to us as Americans or citizens of the world, right? They don't. The number one priority, again, is to the shareholders. That's why this is happening. It's not about individuals, it's about the system.
So the clip you saw, Frances Haugen, I agree and disagree. So, and this is important, and I've got facts to back it up. So the agreement part is the part that Anna's talking about. They want to drive up engagement because that drives up profits. So they're not doing it for no reason. That's the main reason why they're doing it. So what part do I disagree with? Well, she said it's not a right wing or a left wing thing. That's just not true. It's empirically not remotely true. And when you say dangerous things like that, what it's gonna do is have them go, oh, let's ban people saying racist things and criminal things and false things, but let's also ban people saying true things, non-criminal things, and fighting against racism. By the way, that has happened in the past. Any discussion of race, you're racist, you're against racism, it doesn't matter, we're banning you all. That's a coward's way out, okay? And very likely what they'll wind up doing. So so now, is she wrong about that? Yeah, I have quotes from Wall Street Journal here. They have documents that they looked at from Facebook. Here's one quote from Wall Street Journal. The documents viewed by the journal, which don't capture all of the employee messaging, said, quote, didn't mention equivalent debates over left-wing publications. So they had debates about, wait a minute, right-wing publications, they're saying all these hateful things, it's driving false things, and it's driving things. Did they have debates about left-wing publications and making exemptions for them to violate their rules? Never once. If a left-wing publication violates any rule, gone, okay? Right-wing publications like Breitbart violating rule after rule after rule. In fact, here's another quote from the Wall Street Journal. They also allege Facebook gave special treatment to Breitbart and other conservative publishers, helping them skirt penalties for circulating misinformation or hate speech.
Why?
But show me if it's both, okay? Show me where the left wing is promoting hate speech or misinformation. By the way, if they are, I think they should face the same consequences as any right-wing publication would. And I'll add another, by the way. I don't want the right wing being published for their opinions. So if you're bringing up, hey, I don't like what they're saying about Black Lives Matter, okay. But they got a right to say that. They have a right to cover the stories in any way that they view to be fine, unless they're violating your rules and they say black people are this, and you have a policy saying, well, you can't do that based on race. It depends on what your policies are, but you must enforce your policies fairly. Not fairly as in, I don't know, I just took a bunch of right-wingers and a bunch of left-wingers and I banned them all because I didn't want to bother dealing with political ramifications. No, what did people actually do? So which then say, well, were they really scared of right-wingers? More quotes. Here's from an actual researcher. When they were discussing internally at Facebook, hey, should we punish the right wing for clearly, obviously violating our laws? Quote, at best, it would be a very difficult policy discussion, okay? Here's another quote from an employee in an internal communication at the time. Quote, we're scared of political backlash if we enforce our policies without exemptions. So they're having conversations about how they're scared of the right wing. The right wing is intimidating them, and it's totally working. You see it in the internal communications, the last couple here. The staffer wrote about Breitbart, we make special exceptions to our written policies for them. We even explicitly endorse them by including them as trusted partners in our core products. And in case all of that wasn't clear enough, this is from Yahoo News. The whistleblower alleged that when questioned about a policy exempting publishers, including Breitbart News, from its standard rules, Facebook's vice president of global public policy, Joel Kaplan, said, quote, do you want to start a fight with Steve Bannon?
It's amazing.
So
it's pathetic. The
right wing bullied them and intimidated them, and by the way, also created profits for them through hatred and purposely violating the rules. And Facebook thought, profits plus disagreeing with a right winger is going to get me in a lot of trouble, political trouble in this country. So I don't want any piece of it. The right wing is now exempt from our rules.
Because
that's unbelievable. And if anyone in the left wing did it, they would be crushed to oblivion. So that's the reality of what's happening in social media.
But what's the main difference between the right wing and the left wing in the country? It's not just about the power behind the publication doing the publishing. It's about the funders funding the publication. And there are a lot of powerful people behind right wing content creators.
Yeah, and look, we're also beating around the bush. It looks by all indications on economic issues that Mark Zuckerberg is very much right wing.
It's a publicly traded corporation, of course, of course. This is the way it works, guys. Doesn't matter if he's a good guy or a bad guy. That, again, it is secondary. It's about incentives and disincentives. The incentives lead him to do what he's doing right now. That's it.
Zuckerberg on several occasions had dinner with Ben Shapiro, asking him, oh, what shall we do? How many did he have with progressive leaders? 0. Nobody has to take progressive leaders into account. By the way, I'll say one last thing. Republicans use their politicians to put undue pressure on outlets like this, and it totally works. Democrats do no such thing. And even progressive leaders, they leave progressive media to fend for itself. And we have no allies, we have no political pressure, we have no nothing. The right wing knows how to play this game, and progressives are so obsessed with themselves, they never actually band together to help one another. And it creates an uneven playing field where these guys run rampant and we can't do a damn thing. There are a lot of great ways to watch the Young Turks, but is there a best way? Of course, the best way is to watch live. Tune in weekdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. You get our uncensored, unapologetic version of the news that you won't get anywhere else. Watch us live.